actually.
Go.
Obviously, you've thought a lot about it, and like one thing that interests me about libertarianism, when Gary Johnson started campaigning, he was criticized for supposedly supporting intervention in Uganda, and so that was my first instance of finding out that there was some different opinions within libertarian philosophy. So my question for you is, do you ever feel like America would be justified in taking the role of France from the Revolutionary War in helping the people free themselves?
Could you be more specific about what you mean as far as France France helped our revolution.
Right,
Should
yes.
we help other people's revolutions?
Yes.
Well, I think if people are casting off an oppressive government, and they certainly should do that, and if people voluntarily want to help them do that, that's fine, but I don't think the government could do it because the government's taking its money through taxes, and it's not right to forcibly take my money or anybody's money, even to do good things, even if that's a good thing. If it was to feed people or whatever, we think that this should all be done voluntarily and can and will be done voluntarily with the absence of the state. So no, I wouldn't support the government doing that, but people can do it.
I think you have seen that happen a little bit too. There's a story about a machine gun preacher who went to Uganda, I believe it was, and instead of lobbying the government to help fight the LRA there, he used his own resources, set up his own church. So for instances in like tribal Pakistan or northwest India, you would support more voluntary action of trying to go and help people throw off the burden of oppressive government than actually lobbying our state as a whole and our society as a whole to intervene in a conflict. Because I'm all for letting people solve their own problems. If the people are justified and if they have a good vision for their future, then people will rally around them and they'll be able to support it themselves. Suppose that's my free market mind trying to rationalize the conflict.
Yeah, I think that's right. That we should leave it to them, and I can't speak to whether like revolution, say, is appropriate in those countries. That's the best thing for them to do. I don't know what the best course is for them, which is one reason why I shouldn't be opining on what they should be made to do or anything like that. But certainly, we should encourage liberty movements within those countries and try to spread our ideas within those countries peacefully.
Absolutely. So to clarify, government is inherently used to manipulate economic imperialization, political imperialization. Because of the risk associated with that, it is much better to have voluntary action helping people in another part of the world free themselves from government than it is to have a government helping a rebel movement, perhaps. Because we see that going on in Syria. They say, oh, we're helping them overthrow an oppressive government. Really, we're just helping ourselves to economically imperialize a country.
Yeah, right. The U.S. government, when it acts internationally, generally, it's not just purely benevolent. It's doing things to serve various interest groups. And so we can't assume that they're always backing the right guys. They don't necessarily have an incentive to back the right guys. They're going to back the guys who they think are going to do the U.S.'s bidding in the end if they get into power. And those might not necessarily be the best guys for the people in that particular country. For example, in the past, the U.S. installed the Shah in Iran, who was a terribly brutal dictator and very anti-free market. But since he would do the U.S.'s bidding, we kept him in place there for so long. Yeah, we shouldn't trust the government's judgment on who belongs in power in every country in the world, especially since the people who are running our government don't even belong in power here themselves.
I like where you're going with that. So on a personal level, would you feel that you are justified in you personally intervening in another conflict? Say tribal Pakistan, they want to live under Sharia law, oppressing a gender, half of their population. Would you feel morally justified in trying to push your beliefs as an individual? Would you feel morally justified in trying to change that situation?
I can't speak to the specific situation in Pakistan as to what's the most prudent thing to do there. Certainly, if you can help liberate people who are being oppressed by, oppressive religious laws that they don't want to be subject to. Now, if people want to voluntarily subject themselves to Islamic law, that's just fine. But if they're being oppressed, then it may be right to help liberate them from that voluntarily and preferably peacefully in general too. If anything can be resolved peacefully rather than through even violent revolution, I would always favor that.
Cool, good deal, man. Thank you so much.
Sure,
I really
thank
appreciate
you.
you. Awesome.